Dawn broke gently over the Malibu coastline, its golden light filtering softly through the trees, yet the air carried an uneasy weight, as if nature herself was foreshadowing something ominous. High on a ridge where an abandoned house stood, a thin plume of black smoke spiraled lazily upward, drifting against the vivid blue sky before being whisked away by the fierce Santa Ana winds. The wind roared dry and hot, a restless breath of earth and stone, waiting for fire to awaken it. Days of relentless heat and desiccating winds had turned the land into a vast tinderbox. No one knew for certain what sparked that first trace of smoke. Some speculated it could have been a carelessly discarded cigarette butt, or perhaps an accident from someone recklessly burning debris nearby. But at that moment, the origin remained a mystery. "Call the fire department, now!" a middle-aged man living near the area shouted as flames suddenly burst forth from the faint wisp of smoke. His voice carried sharply, alerting the nearby residents. What began as a small flicker amid the dry grass rapidly expanded, seizing upon each brittle branch and wilted cluster of vegetation as if fueled by an insatiable hunger. The fire spread with an alarming ferocity, outpacing any human response. It leapt across open fields, racing through the bone-dry terrain with terrifying speed. Every gust of wind seemed to breathe new life into the flames, pushing them higher and hotter, their searing heat palpable from hundreds of meters away. Fiery tendrils curled skyward, feeding towering columns of thick black smoke that choked the once pristine horizon. The community was thrown into a frenzy as residents scrambled to warn others and battle the growing inferno with whatever they could muster. "Quick, get water, grab buckets, fire extinguishers, anything," a woman cried out, clutching her young child tightly while frantically gesturing to her husband. Yet their desperate individual efforts were no match for the fire's relentless advance, which grew fiercer with each passing moment. Within mere hours, the blaze had spread far beyond its point of origin, consuming the surrounding areas and racing toward residential neighborhoods. Firefighting teams from nearby districts were dispatched immediately. Fire trucks tore down narrow roads, their sirens wailing urgently, while firefighting aircraft swooped low overhead, releasing torrents of water onto the rampaging flames. Roared onward, heedless of the efforts to contain it. "The winds shifted again, watch out!" a firefighter bellowed as the flames suddenly reversed course, carried by a fresh burst of the unrelenting Santa Ana winds. The air vibrated with urgency, the heavy stomp of boots shouted warnings, and the explosive crackling of trees engulfed in fire, all blending into the oppressive, smoke-filled atmosphere. The Malibu sky, once a serene azure that heralded a tranquil morning, was now shrouded in a dark, ashen grey. The fire raged on, an unyielding force consuming everything in its path, even as firefighters and residents alike fought desperately against nature's fury. The flames danced wildly, mocking their efforts, as the community grappled with a disaster that showed no sign of relenting. By the second day, the fire had spread with terrifying speed, engulfing the neighboring areas and consuming the entirety of Pacific Palisades. The once lush green hills were now bathed in a fiery red glow, cloaked in thick, choking smoke. The oppressive heat radiated outward, and the air grew stifling, suffused with an unbearable heaviness. The local residents, many of whom were accustomed to wildfire seasons, found themselves awestruck by the sheer scale of nature's destruction this time. On the hilltop, in their family home, Clara and Henry stood watching as the flames crept ever closer. Their old, rustic wooden house, an heirloom of cherished memories passed down through generations, had only moments left before it, too, would be lost. Clara, clutching a box filled with old photographs, fought back tears. "Henry, we can't take everything." "But at least these keepsakes," she said, her voice trembling. Henry, a man who had weathered countless storms, could no longer mask his emotions. "Clara, we have to leave now. We're still alive. That's what matters most," he urged, his voice steady but tinged with grief. His eyes lingered on the home one last time, reflecting the deep pain of saying goodbye to something so dear. The roads leading out of the affected areas were packed with traffic as residents hurried to evacuate. Cars formed endless lines amid the chaos, their drivers navigating the tumult of the situation. Some people carried their pets and essential belongings, while others, caught in panic, left with little more than the clothes on their backs. The blaring of fire truck sirens and the shouts of neighbors calling out to one another filled the air, creating a cacophony of urgency and despair. Meanwhile, rescue teams were battling the flames with every ounce of strength they had. Firefighters worked tirelessly, but the relentless heat and the fierce Santa Ana winds made containment efforts seem almost impossible. One crew, led by a seasoned firefighter named Jake, had been holding the line in the thick of the inferno for hours. "Jake, we can't hold this area much longer," one of his teammates shouted, sweat pouring down his face even though the sun had long since set. Jake wiped his own sweat-drenched face, his eyes resolute as he stared into the heart of the blaze. "We can't give up. Every minute we fight gives the people more time to get out safely," he replied, his voice firm with determination. Overhead, firefighting aircraft flew low, releasing torrents of water in an effort to halt the fire's spread. On the ground, volunteers from all over the region arrived to provide aid. They brought water, food, and, perhaps most importantly, words of encouragement for the exhausted firefighters and displaced residents. A young volunteer named Lisa, handing out water to the firefighters, spoke with a voice thick with emotion. "I know this is such hard work, but please keep going. Everyone here is so grateful for what you're doing." Jake managed a tired but heartfelt smile. "We won't stop until this fire is under control," he assured her. As the hours dragged on, every second felt like an eternity. Yet, amidst the chaos, the relentless efforts of rescue teams and volunteers became a beacon of hope, a flicker of light in the darkness for a community teetering on the edge of devastation. On the third day of the wildfire, the flames had surged far beyond control, roaring like a furious beast, mercilessly devouring everything in their path. Among the many places ravaged by the inferno was a historic museum nestled deep in the hills. This museum was not just a repository of priceless artifacts, but a symbol of memory and history for the entire region. When the relentless flames consumed the museum, the news spread quickly, casting a pall of sorrow over the community. "This wasn't just a museum," said Mr. Harris, the longtime curator who had dedicated most of his life to the institution, his voice choked with emotion. Standing amid the still smouldering ashes, his vacant eyes stared at what had once been the beating heart of the community. "It was our memory, our soul. What was lost today will never return." At a designated safe zone, now serving as a temporary relief centre, residents gathered to share their grief and seek comfort in one another's stories. Tears streamed down the face of Mrs. Julia, an elderly resident, as she recounted the times she had brought her grandchildren to the museum. "My grandson used to love those old artifacts," she said, her voice breaking. "He'd ask endless questions about the ancient armour and pottery. Now, it's all gone." Families who had lost their homes huddled together in makeshift tents, trying to maintain a sense of composure. The cries of children blended with the faint whisper of the nighttime wind. Some sat in silence, their distant gazes searching for the memories they'd lost in the flames. Jake, the devoted firefighter, arrived at the relief centre, his exhaustion visible but his resolve unshaken. He moved from table to table, checking in on the residents and offering words of encouragement in a steady, reassuring voice. "We're doing everything we can," he told a group of evacuees waiting anxiously for updates. "We won't stop until the last flame is extinguished. You're not alone in this." Despite the collective effort to support one another, the weight of loss hung heavily in the air. Some families mourned their destroyed homes, others grieved the irreplaceable mementos now reduced to ash. Symbols of life and memory, once vibrant, had vanished into smoke. Yet, amidst the devastation, the warmth of human compassion shone like faint but persistent embers in the night. Volunteers from all over had come to help, bringing food, water, and heartfelt words of encouragement. "I know this can't make up for what you've lost," said Lily, a young volunteer, as she handed a bag of groceries to an elderly woman, "but we're here to help you through this." The community's solidarity became a powerful source of strength. Small gestures, a clasp of hands, an embrace, or simply listening, helped those affected find their footing once more. In the midst of heartbreak, Fragile yet steadfast hope flickered like tiny embers, promising that a new day would dawn. On the fourth day, black smoke from the wildfires continued to billow high over the skies of California, forming a shroud of mourning over the land. The heat from the flames remained oppressive, making the air suffocating and more unbearable than ever. Yet, amid mounting difficulties, hope flickered faintly in the hearts of millions. On social media, a movement called Pray for California erupted spontaneously. Heart-wrenching images of the flames, displaced families, and exhausted firefighters sparked compassion and solidarity from people across the world. From small, remote villages to major cities like Los Angeles and San Francisco, citizens united in spirit, praying for a miracle to save the beleaguered state. At a press conference, President Joe Biden stepped up to the podium with a somber yet determined expression. Today, we are not just facing a natural tragedy, but a test of our compassion and unity. We are strongest when we stand together. Keep hope alive and take action, he said, his warm, steady voice instilling strength in those listening. Meanwhile, re-elected President Donald Trump, a figure known for his ever-controversial presence in political discourse, personally visited a relief center in the affected area. This time he appeared not just as a leader, but as a fellow companion in tangible action. By his side was Elon Musk, the renowned entrepreneur and founder of SpaceX, who had arrived with a team of technical experts and advanced equipment to aid disaster response. "Elon, we need to ensure these families have the essentials to get through these tough days," Trump said, his gaze resolute but laced with empathy. Elon nodded, his voice firm. "I've mobilized teams and transported portable energy systems to power the relief stations. This is just the beginning." Their efforts went beyond words. Alongside volunteers and staff from non-profit organizations, they began distributing food, water, and essential supplies. Trump personally engaged with affected families, listening to their stories and offering heartfelt reassurances. "We will not abandon you. Trust that America stands with you," he said warmly. Elon, meanwhile, led engineers in installing temporary solar charging stations to restore connectivity and provide power to the devastated areas. A resident, overwhelmed with gratitude, asked, "Mr. Musk, what drives you to put so much effort into this?" Elon smiled and replied, "I can't stand by when this community needs help. This is the time for us all to make a difference." These actions quickly went viral on social media, igniting a wave of hope and unity across America. The efforts of Trump and Elon not only exemplified compassion, but also inspired millions to contribute, no matter how small, to aid those in need. "We don't just need prayers, we need action," Trump declared during a brief press conference at the relief center. "Together, we will overcome this disaster." Barron Trump and his classmates, along with their teachers, spent days and nights packing and delivering relief supplies. Boxes filled with essentials like blankets, clothing, and medicine were sent directly to those sheltering in temporary centers. The grateful smiles of recipients reinforced the students' sense that their work was not just a duty, but a mission. In these trying times, people were not just praying, but also taking action. Group prayers were held in churches, parks, and even on the streets. Songs and prayers echoed in the air, like a collective plea to the heavens. "Send us rain, save California." Images of children holding hands and praying outside a relief center touched hearts around the world. Amid the prayers, scientists and meteorologists worked tirelessly. "All indicators suggest a chance of rain in the coming days, though nothing is certain yet," said Dr. Helen Carter, a climate expert, in an interview. "We are monitoring closely and hoping for a shift in the weather." The words and actions of people from all over bolstered the spirits of firefighters and residents on the front lines of this natural catastrophe. They were fighting not just the flames, but also fear and despair. "We're not alone. The whole world is rooting for us," one firefighter said to his comrades, his eyes shining with determination under the fiery glow. Hope, though fragile, continued to burn brightly in the hearts of Californians. They believed that with faith and solidarity, a miracle would come, and their land would overcome the most devastating disaster in its history. On the night of the 8th day, the fire still raged fiercely, like an untamed beast refusing to be subdued. But then, a miracle happened. Heavy grey clouds began to gather in the sky, obscuring the faint light of the moon. The Santa Ana winds, which had fueled the fire's rapid spread, calmed. Rain began to fall. The first drops, like gifts from heaven, brought hope to the exhausted hearts of those fighting the inferno. At the firefighting command center, Jake, a young firefighter, slumped against a tent, utterly drained. He looked up at the sky, where the glow of a nearby lamp caught the glistening drops of the first rain. He blinked several times, as if to ensure he wasn't dreaming. "It's raining," he said, his voice choked with emotion. He turned to his teammates, his eyes gleaming with newfound hope. "We didn't fight in vain." His words filled the air with raw emotion, prompting everyone nearby to look toward the sky. Slow nods, reddened eyes, but no words followed. They didn't need to speak, because they all understood that this battle was more than just a fight against fire. It was a testament to their will and resilience. The rain intensified, pouring down with force, washing away the black smoke rising from scorched forests and fields. The once fierce flames, cruel in their destruction, began to shrink under nature's might. Smaller blazes were extinguished one by one, leaving behind thin trails of smoke and the earthy scent of damp soil. In nearby neighborhoods, residents began to return. They stood silently in the rain, their eyes fixed on their homes, or what remained of them, the pain of loss mixed with relief that the disaster had finally passed. "We prayed and God heard us," Mrs. Clara said, her trembling hand gripping Mr. Henry's tightly. Tears mingled with the rain, streaming down her weathered face. In the days that followed, the rain didn't stop. It fell for 3 days straight, as if nature itself was offering comfort to soothe the anguish, fear, and immeasurable losses. The water washed away the ashes, revealing barren landscapes, but also opening the door to hope for renewal. Firefighters finally found moments to rest. They gathered in their tents, sharing stories of harrowing moments and times when survival seemed impossible. "There were times I thought we wouldn't make it," one firefighter admitted, his voice trembling as he recalled the ordeal. "But seeing this rain now, I know hope was never lost." The group fell silent, but the silence was heavy with meaning. Gratitude, pride, and an unwavering belief that they had done the right thing. The people of Malibu, once victims of the fire, now joined hands to begin cleaning up and rebuilding their lives. The losses were irreparable, but the fire had failed to destroy their spirit of unity and hope. From tragedy, a stronger community emerged. Children played amidst the ashes, their innocent laughter a symbol of a brighter future. "This is a miracle, and we will never forget it," Mrs. Clara added, her voice filled with emotion. Those around her nodded in agreement. They understood that beyond their relentless efforts, it was compassion and the strength of their faith that had seen them through this trial. The Malibu fire was not just a story of devastation. It became a symbol of humanity's resilience and the power of belief. In the darkest of times, a miracle arrived, bringing light to the days ahead. The flames had been extinguished, but the fire within the human spirit continued to burn brightly. This story has touched your heart. We would love for you to share where you're from and your prayers for California in the comments below. Please help spread this message by liking and sharing it with your friends so we can gather more prayers for this disaster to pass soon. Helping us reach our first milestone of 1,000 subscribers, which means the world to us and allows us to create more meaningful stories for you. Don't forget to share your thoughts about the story. Thank you for your support, and we'll see you in our next story.